Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne. I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This week, I'm talking to Adam Karnacz about his work, motivations, along with a range of other topics I hope you'll find interesting. Venturing to remote locations, Adam strives to inspire a diverse following to explore the art of photography, adventure and the human condition. Drawing on his philosophical approach to life, Adam's photography goes beyond technique or literal representation of a scene to tell a story that resonates and inspires. For some years, photography, while still an important part of his life, remained as a hobby. In 2005, Adam joined the police, moving to London and starting his career on the beat in the Metropolitan force. It was during these eventful and challenging years that Adam developed a philosophy of life which feeds into everything he does today, both as a person and a photographer. After a number of years of budget cuts and growing disenchantment with the direction policing in Britain was taking, he began to contemplate the possibility of a change of career. And so in 2014, he decided to give up his role as a sergeant and move to West Yorkshire in pursuit of a more affordable lifestyle with greater and easy access to the countryside, which he felt was important both for his future plans and for his own well-being and that of his young family. During the next 4 years, he set about building up his photography into a business that was viable enough to support his family. A large part of the earlier success of his business was building up his YouTube channel, First Man Photography, to the point where he was reaching tens of thousands of people every week with his videos. These videos started off as tutorials, but very quickly developed into a sharing of his experience, his love of the outdoors and landscape photography, and in fostering that love in other people. As of March 2022, the First Man Photography YouTube channel has almost 150,000 subscribers, over 250,000 views a month and 1.5 million minutes watched per month. What sets Adam apart is the philosophy on life and mental well-being that he weaves into much of his commentary and his work. He's a storyteller, crafting his journeys through the landscape into meaningful and fulfilling experiences which he shares with others through both his finished artworks and his films. Above all else, Adam's passion and enthusiasm for photography is infectious, and he works tirelessly to encourage a love of the landscape and nature in others. His skill set is wide and covers a broad spectrum, but at the core of everything he does is the desire to tell stories, lift up those around him, take on challenges, and inspire a diverse following to explore the art of photography, adventure, and the human condition. We discuss how his career and motivations have developed, his passion for seeking out the stories behind his work, the work he has done to educate himself about how the economy and energy sector works, and how that relates to the current trend around NFTs and why he won't sell his work as NFTs, along with a lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Adam, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Hello, very, very good, thank you. Thanks for reaching out and inviting me onto your excellent podcast. That's always very much appreciated to have my say about a few things that we might end up talking about today.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Great to have you on. And, I've been watching your vlogs for some time, and that's something that we will touch on. And I got a couple of other topics I think we probably need to touch on, as we go through the process.
Sure.
I guess let's start with what got you started in photography. People that have watched your vlog will obviously know a little bit about your history, but I guess there may be some people out there that haven't picked up YouTube yet and haven't looked at you. So what's the Adam Karnacz story?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably my love of landscape photography came just from spending the vast majority of my childhood outside. I was very fortunate where I grew up in a small town in northern England, which was right on the border of a national park. So in this particular town where I grew up, you could kind of look one way to the hills, turn around and off sort of 8 miles or so the other way, you'd have the sea and the North Yorkshire coast. So I was very fortunate with where I grew up, and it was before the days. I'm old enough to have lived before the internet. So my weekends and evenings were kind of spent playing with other kids on the street, and we rode bikes. We went up into the woods. We played football, and it was I just spent a lot of that time outside. And then photography came into it because my dad was into a bit of photography. He also worked for a company that did some promotional stuff with schools around photography and other things. But part of that, he often had a mobile darkroom that was in the back of a van that he used to go around to schools with sometimes and develop film with kids. So having that opportunity to do that kind of got me into the whole kind of playing with chemicals and messing about with film and taking photos. And then that probably culminated when I was 16 and I went to the US with my friend after we'd done our exams, and we explored around Yosemite and Death Valley and various other parts of California and Arizona and stuff. And that was a great trip. And whilst driving around Yosemite, I'd bought this kind of disposable panoramic camera from Kodak. Produced these amazing kind of, I don't know, like 20 centimeter wide images. They were really cool. But I bought that. I had 20. I think it had 20 shots in it, and took that into Yosemite. And I was with my friend's mum and aunties, and every now and again I'd get them to stop the car so I could jump out and take an image of a scene that I enjoyed. And after a while, they were getting annoyed with it. Oh, it's stopping again. You're like, I think we've got Ansel Adams in the back here. And I'd never heard of Ansel Adams before at that point. And that was that turns out to have been a really nice moment, because that then led me to looking into Ansel Adams and what he did in Yosemite. So it was just a sort of a really nice moment. And then I've still got some of those images that I took on that trip, and I'm still really pleased with them as well. But then after that, I kind of got into my late teens, and other things sort of took over as you become an adult, and I probably drunk a generation of people that drunk too much, got interested in playing more sports and chasing around after girls and stuff and that kind of thing. So, and then I went to university, and photography just went by the wayside for a while. And then I joined the police, and not long after I joined the police, maybe a little bit before, I can't quite remember the timing, but I got back into photography at about the same time as a hobby, like most people do. And then, just kind of, I've been doing it solidly ever since. When I was a cop, that was still as a hobby, and then it sort of molded into what is now my career. So that's in a nutshell, that's the sort of journey my photography took, and the backstory.
Fair enough. So talk us through how you made the decision to make it a career and go full time. Was it something that you'd always wanted to do in the back of your mind, or was it something that was more of
No, definitely not. Like when I joined the police, I'd always wanted to do something that tested me. I felt like, I mean, my parents split up when I was younger, which wasn't the easiest thing to deal with. But overall, my childhood was really nice. Like, it was, at times it felt almost easy. Like, I had good friends, I had good parents, even though they weren't together. It brought some challenges, but like I said, I grew up in a fairly idyllic place. And I knew there was more out there in the world. There was some stuff going on. So I wanted to join the armed forces initially. But because I have asthma, they wouldn't take me at that stage. So I pitched for the next best thing and joined the police. And then I thought, well, I don't just want to join the police where I live. I want to travel down to London and get the most difficult thing that the police has to offer in the UK.
Yeah, sure.
So, and then, I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I thought, as did everybody, that would be a career for life. Like you did 30 years. So I joined when I was like 24 or something. I'd have been 54 when I retired with a load of life left. And I thought, well, at that point I might do something around with photography. But times changed. The government pulled the rug out from underneath cops by changing the pension, changing the deal, and then obviously 2008 hit with a financial crash. That then fed into the public sector in the UK probably about a year later. And you just sort of started to see yourself getting worse off and worse off. Opportunities were just disappearing as well.
Yeah,
and then the final straw, I think, was they didn't really want people that thought for themselves. They wanted robots, basically, that would do policing by flowchart. And that isn't how policing should work. It should be It should be people who are operating independently. They have their own discretion to make their own decisions, and it's through that you have people from the community policing the community. That's the whole ethos of the police, and that was starting to be eroded. And I think ever since then, actually, we've seen that continue to get eroded to the point where sometimes you see the police as, some people see the police as like a militant arm of government. And that isn't what the police should be. It should be
what they're not what they're meant for. Yeah,
it should be the people policing the people, and that's not always what it is. So I became a bit disillusioned with the way things were going. I felt like the wrong people were getting promoted. The people who were getting promoted were like people that only cared about themselves. They had the wrong thing. They weren't doing the right thing. Sometimes even they were doing illegal things. So I just kind of got sick of it and decided probably 4 years prior to leaving, 4 or 5 years, that I wanted to leave. So I'd already started doing a couple of weddings and things with my photography, and just started to slowly build it up. And then probably 3 years out from leaving, I started the YouTube channel. So I transferred back up north. We had our second child, and almost to the day that my second child was born, I started my YouTube channel, because I wasn't getting any sleep anyway from having this. She slept like 3 hours a night for about the first year and a bit. So I wasn't getting any sleep anyway. So I thought, well, I might as well do a day at work, come home, film a video, and then go to bed for 3 hours. And I lived my life like that pretty much for a year. And I was working like 16, 17 hours a day, maybe a bit more, to get this YouTube channel up and running.
Yeah.
That's not something anyone can sustain, but I don't regret doing it, because it created a foundation for what I now have, which then sort of 3 years later allowed me to to leave the police, and on good terms. Like there was no real bitterness, particularly of any individuals, and pursue this dream, really.
Okay.
And I'm now like 4 years down the line. I think I left 4 years. I think I left the police 4 years ago. It's soon. With coronavirus and stuff, kind of 2 years have just disappeared out of memory, haven't they? So it's
I've got no idea what day it is today. And, it's it's hard to tell what year it is, but no, I know exactly what you mean. So in talking about starting the vlogging, how did you make that decision to what was it that attracted you to doing that and sort of sharing your experience to the world?
I mean, to be honest, like when I first started making videos, it was tutorials. I'd watched people like, I don't know, Jared Polan in the US, and that couple, I can't remember their names. Guy with grey hair.
Yeah, I know who you mean, but I can't think of their name either.
So some of those sort of first stage YouTube channels that did photography, and I thought, well, I quite like that, but there's no one in the UK doing that.
Sure.
And it was at the same time, I was kind of doing wedding photography and getting a lot of friction from existing photographers who didn't want you there. Essentially, they didn't like the competition, and there was a lot of bitterness and rivalry, and they weren't willing to help. So that new wave of people who watched YouTube and were online, I felt like I could share some stuff that I'd learned with them, particularly around the technical stuff, at that point, because that's it was those tutorials, I think, at that time that people were looking for, and especially from a kind of non-American voice, perhaps.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of initial thing for the channel, was doing tutorials, and the water drop stuff that I did around water drop photography really took off, and that sort of bolstered my channel for quite a long time. But then I got into watching vlogs, and when vlogging became a thing, and people like Casey Neistat started doing vlogging, I thought, that's cool. I like his style.
Yep.
I could have a go at that, but out in the landscape, doing landscape photography, because that was always my first love with photography. And I thought, oh yeah, that sounds good. So I went out and I went to Yorkshire. I didn't want it to look like a Casey Neistat film. Do you know what I mean? So I've tried to put my own style on it, and obviously my personality as well. So I went out, did a video, talked about my day, was really happy with the video, and then posted it. Did pretty well. It got, I can't remember exact views, but over 1,000 views, I think.
Nice.
And then people started commenting, and I was and they were like, Adam, that was really good, but where are the images?
Yeah.
And landscape photography vlogs weren't a thing at that point. So I'd done the whole video, talked about the shot I was doing, and because of the schedule and my editing, and I was still working at that point as well, I hadn't had time to edit the images and add them into the video.
Sure.
So it just didn't cross my mind to include the images, because I was just making a story of my day. But then people were like, where are the images? I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, putting the images after what I've just talked about.
Definitely.
So on the second one, that's what I did, and that's kind of how it kind of developed. And then a little while after that, I think I'd done about 7 or 8 vlogs, and then someone commented saying, have you come across a guy called Thomas Heaton?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's doing something similar to what you're doing. And I hadn't done at that point. And then, checked him out and saw, that he was doing something really similar, but had kind of 10 times more subscribers than I've got. So I was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I really like what he's doing. And to this day, he sort of is one of the few that I still pay any attention to. So
yeah, sure.
Because I think he's unlike some people, I think he's kind of hopefully like me, has maintained that kind of authenticity all the way through.
Yeah.
Which I think when you're looking at these videos and anything, and I've talked about this in some of my sort of more monologue type videos recently, is that I think that authenticity is what counts. That's what people really connect with.
Absolutely.
Particularly over these last few years with things going on in the world outside of our control. I think people have really taken comfort in authentic people and podcasts and longer form YouTube videos and stuff.
Definitely, yeah. I think in the past couple of years, and you comment about having no visuals. My podcast, I don't do visuals. I record the video because I've been doing these all on Zoom, but I don't put that up. The only images that you'll see are actually the promo videos that I do for each episode. And a profile shot of the artist who I'm talking to. So, but I think you're quite right about the authenticity thing. It's really important that people, engage with you as opposed to you as a character which you might be portraying. And I get what you mean with some of the other vloggers, and I'm not, necessarily, pointing fingers at anyone here in particular, but, there's definitely some which, you kind of look at and go, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but maybe you're not quite as authentic,
Yeah, I'm definitely not passing judgment, because it's actually really difficult to be authentic, particularly as you go on camera. Because I remember when I first started practicing with my video setup for one of my first tutorials, when I was still living in southern England, I'd set up the camera, thought about the lighting, thought about all the sort of photography, videography side of things, and then I switched the camera on. That little red light came on, and I thought, oh shit, I've got to say something now. And that kind of had almost slipped my mind that you've got to actually say something.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's really, really tempting to create this kind of presentation personality. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you've spent your life watching TV, and you kind of feel like you've got to turn it up to 11.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in a way, that's true, because you don't. And I think this is where some other smaller vloggers struggle sometimes, is that they don't have the confidence in what they're saying. Do you know? And that doesn't become authentic. I think they're saying what they believe.
Sure.
But it doesn't come across authentically because there's no confidence in it. And I think that's what you need a little bit on screen. Because if you're constantly apologizing for what you're saying,
yeah,
or putting yourself down, not being trying to be self-effacing, but really just sort of putting yourself down constantly is an excuse for something you might accidentally say that you don't mean.
Yeah,
I think that's lacking authenticity. But that's where it's difficult. So I think you kind of, certainly when I look back at my old videos, that's what I'm like. It's kind of, I'm almost like apologetic with what I'm saying, because I'm a bit scared of what people might think of me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I look back at those now and I'm like, oh, hello, this is Adam and welcome to First Man Photography. But then I went too far the other way and went, hi, I'm Adam, and then I think eventually I kind of slotted into this presentation style that mostly matches my own normal personality.
I think it's really what you were saying. It is really about that experience, and you dial things up and down a little bit, and you finally hit that level where you go, okay, well, this is me. This is comfortable. I'm confident. I know what I'm doing. I know that what I'm going to be saying. There's always going to be somebody that will, sling a brickbat at you, but
Yeah. I think it's the same for everybody, though. Like, I think a way to imagine it is that you don't talk and communicate the same with your mate down the pub than you do if you were talking in a meeting at work.
Absolutely.
Or presenting something at work. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if you're standing up in front of a room of 5 people to talk, you're still going to start. You kind of want to grow into that, don't you? And,
definitely.
Then if it's like that's different to how me and you are just having a chat now. It's not. So I think that remains authentic. That's not being false. It's just understanding how you are presenting and who you are presenting to. Like, it's, say for example, when I'm doing a vlog and I've got a really nice sunset. If I didn't have the camera there, I wouldn't be shouting and screaming and excited. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's right. Yeah.
I'd be feeling it inside, but I'm not going to be going, whoa, yes, this is amazing. I can't believe this sunset has happened. But when I'm doing the video, I let some of that out. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, this is amazing.
I know exactly
I'm so happy. Look how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
This is making me feel so good. And it's just verbalizing those feelings that a lot of landscape photographers have in those moments. But if there was no camera there, I'd be stood there. I'd just be like, you know what I mean? Like, arms folded.
Watching it, screaming on the inside going, that looks fantastic.
Exactly. I wish someone was here with me. Like,
that's right. And I'm constantly knee deep in water doing seascapes at sunrise, thinking exactly the same thing, screaming on the inside going, yes, this is fantastic. But, on the outside, there's not much sound and not much expression on my face either. Yeah?
Exactly. Yeah, that's totally natural, isn't it?
Yeah. So when one of the things that I've noticed in particular, and not just your channel, but everything on YouTube now seems to have that clickbait title. Where do you stand on that? And is that just because of the nature of the beast, or is it something that I guess you've just got to fall into line with because that's what gets you your clicks?
I talked about this on a recent video, and I've kind of come to the acceptance that content is no longer king. It used to be. Even going back like 2 or 3 years ago, content was king. If you had good content, people would find it and click it.
Yep.
But I dread to think how many new YouTube channels have popped up in that time. Millions, probably. So the competition from all these young people joining YouTube, more older people getting into YouTube, it's just the supply of content is just erupting, and it's probably still going exponential in growth. So getting that initial attention has never been more important. And literally on YouTube, the only thing that does that is your title and thumbnail. So I've kind of come to the acceptance that the title and thumbnail are absolutely vital, unless you already have an enormous audience and you're happy to coast along. So I could probably do, at the stage I'm at, I could probably do any title I wanted and any old thumbnail, and I'd get 5,000 views probably.
Yeah.
But 5,000 views is not, that's not YouTube. Continuing to do YouTube is not viable for me if I only get 5,000 views. So I've come to the acceptance that I need to work a lot harder on my thumbnails and titles. And there are some clickbaity titles out there. Some are pretty annoying. But I've kind of decided that I'm going to work harder on my thumbnails and make a thumbnail and title that sparks a curiosity or tells a story just within the title. And sometimes that will be a little bit clickbaity. But I've decided that I'm going to try and hide quality content inside of a slightly clickbaity title. And if people don't like it, then get off YouTube. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that's the nature of the beast. Do we love everything about YouTube? Absolutely not.
Well, it's like all social media. If you're not there, you're not going to get seen. But
exactly,
that does come with some of the penalties that you got to pay, which are you got to play the game their way, because otherwise, again, you really won't be seen.
I mean, it does cause a lot of upset. Like playing the YouTube game is like playing a game where you don't know the rules and you don't know how to win. So so it's just a case of kind of trying to move things around authentically to get the most views you can, to make, particularly if you're doing it full time, to try and, or if you have or if you're aspiring to do it full time, to try and maintain some growth and to maintain a level of income that makes it viable to still do, because it takes a long time. Like YouTube certainly in the past has not been the biggest part of my income, but it's by far the biggest drain on my time.
Absolutely, yeah. I can imagine I've done a little bit of video, but I'm not a vlogger, not a YouTuber by any stretch of the imagination. But the time that I imagine you must spend just on a shoot, walking backwards and forwards, picking up and setting up, your vlogging camera, getting that in the right position, making sure you've got the shot, walking through for your B-roll, doing whatever it is that you've got to do. Then when you're actually recording on a location where you set up, and then getting that back and editing all of that and putting it together. I'm honestly not sure how it could be, I guess, sustainable for, as I say, you got to be there, but what kind of drain on your time is that? How many hours a week, I guess, would you spend on your weekly videos?
I think if I did a vlog, it's like a day out in the field shooting, half a day probably editing the photos and organising all the raw footage into a place where I can then edit it. And then it's a day editing, full day usually, sometimes a little bit more. And then since I've started working harder on the thumbnails and titles and stuff, publishing it probably takes half a day as well, if you include creating the thumbnail and title and all that. So yeah, what was that, like three full days probably? And that's not short days either. That's
no, I don't imagine they're a standard 8-hour day.
Yeah, sort of 12 hours probably. I mean, I've tried over the years to kind of have a more balanced work life going on.
Yeah.
And trying, particularly with like after the pandemic and stuff, trying to be there for the kids, and because my kids are my children are 9 and 7, so it's like it's a stage of their life where I don't want to miss. You know what I mean? Like, so. Oh,
absolutely.
That's why I don't travel as much as some other people might, and that's kind of made me more interested in talking about some of the more human trait aspects and the sort of human element of what we do and why we do it, and trying to find motivation and meaning and fulfillment in what we do, like, and sort of concentrating a little bit more on the why. And particularly as I think we've all gone through this process over the last couple of years, I think of reevaluating our life.
Absolutely.
And thinking about like how do you want to spend it? Because I see some friends and things around who are unhappy in their job, because really all they're doing, no matter what job it is, doesn't really matter. If you're working from home, you wake up in the morning, you sit at a box, you sit in front of a box, you tap on the box all day, and then you switch the box off, and you're still in your house.
Yeah,
and I don't feel like there's any future in that, in terms of living a meaningful and fulfilling life.
No, absolutely.
I think the interaction between people and our relationship with the natural world and being outside, it is so vital to our sense of happiness. And I think if you just in your house all day tapping on a box, you're not going to get that. Even if your job is doing something important, I think like your physical situation, I think, matters.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's what, and also having the opportunity to be creative and interact with other people, and I think it's really important, and particularly being outside.
I totally agree, and I think it's vital. I mean, I spent my 2 years of isolation / coronavirus, lockdown, etc. Pretty much doing what you've just said, and at the end of that, I came out and made a decision that I'm not going to work the 9 to 5 anymore. I'm going to concentrate more on the photography, more on, I started this podcast during the pandemic, mainly because we were in a lockdown where I couldn't go more than 5 kilometres away from where I live. Yeah. And literally there's very little that's exciting to photograph in that 5 kilometre radius. So, it was really a creative outlet. And so for me, it was really about making that decision to to go down that path and spend more time and effort on that than, on other things, now.
I think that's great. I think it's inspiring hearing stories like that where you're not just sitting there feeling sorry for yourself. Do you know what I mean? You kind of, which we all have, I'm sure, at some point over the last few years, but you've decided to do something, you've decided to bring about a creative outlet for yourself.
Yeah.
And also the magic thing about these boxes that we sit in front of is it lets us have conversations with each other halfway around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've got every month or so, I have a call with your countryman Andrew Marr, who's become a really good friend over the last few years. And it's one of my favourite things about YouTube is like being able to connect with people who not in a million years would I have ever connected with without it. And because Andrew came over here, I think back in 2017, 2018, maybe, I can't remember exactly. And we spent some time together. Yeah, then just proper connected, hit it off, a little sort of bromance sort of thing. And then
nice.
We've stayed in touch ever since, just with the odd like Skype call and stuff like that. And it's nice to have a friend halfway around the world that you can keep connected with.
Yeah,
I think that's
absolutely.
Quite
and I think that's one of the benefits of the technology. The downsides that we talked about before. As I said, it's one of the reasons why I made some of the decisions that I have made in terms of spending more time outside, spending more time out, creating and doing photography. Mind you, this last month we've had nothing but rain, so that's not always conducive to good landscape photography. But
no, quite.
But and way too much rain in the last couple of weeks with the floods and so forth. But it's for me, it's really important to get out there and get about, and get up early in the morning, go and do something. And then, you got the whole day ahead of you to, whether it's editing, whether it's, working on, the business and, administrative aspects. And
I think one of the things that I'm kind of keen to push as an idea is that doing landscape photography is so much more than just buying a new lens or getting the focus point in the right place. And I think deep down the landscape photographers understand this, but so much of the conversation is around technical aspects.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I don't talk very much about tech on the podcast. Is because to me that's the least interesting part.
It is, but I think one of the issues is that I find is that a lot of people that get into landscape photography have often come from quite a technical background, so it kind of speaks to them in that way. But then I think it's just absolutely vital to get in touch with that human side of what's going on, and how a little bit about how you're feeling. And I think I was thinking the other day about someone said again to me that we should shoot for ourselves. And I've kind of wrestled with this idea for quite a while now, because I don't think I totally agree with it. I definitely think you should create what you want to create. I think that's like no, there shouldn't be any gatekeepers to your creativity. Do you know what I mean? Like You should let that run wild. But I don't necessarily think we should just be shooting for ourselves, because I think the best art and great art, even good art, is a form of communication.
Absolutely.
And we should be saying something with the art that we're creating. So even if that's just entertainment by looking at a beautiful picture.
Yep.
But I think really good art, it poses questions.
It makes you feel something.
Indeed. It invokes an emotion.
Yeah. And it might be, as you said, I've got some pleasure out of looking at a nice picture. But the really good art does make you think.
Exactly. So it should say it should be the best pictures will be saying something. What that is, it doesn't really matter. But if we're saying something, we surely need someone to listen.
Absolutely.
And I don't think the vast majority of landscape photographers or photographers generally are walking around talking to themselves.
No.
Or talking to a brick wall. Do you know, that's not what we want to do. I think if we're truly, truly honest with ourselves, we want people to see our work and we want them to like it. And
Absolutely.
I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I think it's a case of, yes, there's no gatekeepers on your creativity. We should be creating exactly what we want personally, but there's nothing wrong with that being saying something to someone. Do you know what I mean? And you want. I think it's. I don't understand not wanting an audience for your work.
Yeah.
Like I don't think people are being honest with themselves when they claim that.
Yeah.
I think,
well, otherwise, why would you be on social media? Why would you be sharing on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube?
I think people get nervous about putting themselves out there.
Absolutely,
So we make excuses for ourselves. I used to do it. That's like kind of where this conversation started, was that I was a bit nervous about being myself on camera and really putting myself out there. And it comes. So one of the decisions I made was just to put everything out there, and it was a freeing experience because I no longer had to worry about what people thought, because at that point I had an audience of, say, about 100 people on YouTube, and I knew always that at least one person would like it,
yep,
and another person would dislike it, and it's the rule of one. If one person thinks that way, someone else is bound to, and that ratio over time, as your audience grows, will shift. So you might have 60% love this picture, 40% don't, 80% hate this picture, 20% love it, 99% of people love this picture, 1% don't. That's all. That ratio is going to shift the entire time. That'll be the case about you. It will be the case about your pictures. It will be the case about what you say, and that's totally fine. Like you can't please all people all the time.
No, absolutely, and I don't think anyone really should try. I mean,
no,
I don't think anyone also should be going out to offend anyone and everyone, either. You do see the odd bit of art that attempts to be so controversial that it's. But even there, even if it's 1%, there's still somebody there that's probably going to like it.
Yeah, but I think even that says something, doesn't it? If someone's trying to be overly controversial, that says a lot about them.
Absolutely,
and we all see what you're doing. We all know what you're doing.
That's right.
It's not that clever. All right, so stop it. Do you know what I mean? Like, or don't stop it. I'm not the gatekeeper. So don't do whatever you want to do.
Do whatever you want to do.
I'm not going to look at it though anymore because I know what you're doing. All right.
That's right. Yeah, you've lost me as a follower. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that's all right, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like if I'm saying something you don't like, don't follow me. Do you know what I mean? Like, but you don't. What was
there was that English woman, Mary Whitehouse, in the 70s, who was that sort of anti swearing, anti just about everything fun campaigner in Britain. Any British listeners will probably know who I'm talking about, but she tried to set herself up as a gatekeeper, and as far as I'm concerned, well, no, sorry, Mary, you don't get to say,
exactly.
I've got control over my watching habits or listening habits or viewing habits, and if I don't like what I see, I'll switch it to another channel, or I'll turn it off, or whatever, and I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions about what I want to see and what I don't want to see, and I don't need you to tell me that.
Yeah, I feel sorry for these people that walk around getting offended at every little thing.
Oh God,
it must be really tiring. Do you know, like to be
I haven't got time
to be constantly offended. I just can't. I don't get it. Like it was. You must be knackered all the time.
So let's talk a little bit about your photography, moving away from the YouTube. And I know for you, they're probably a little bit more intrinsically linked than for some others. What is it that motivates you to get out there into the field? Is it just, you like fresh air, you like hiking, or is it a little bit more and deeper than that? And what is it about getting out there that makes you want to record it and share it with people?
The reason has changed over the years. So like when I was younger, it was just because I liked being outside. That's where my mates were.
Yep.
That's the thing. They were the things we were doing. So I was just outside. Then when I got back into photography in my early 20s, it became an escape in a way. Like I think, and a lot of people still use it as that. Like getting outside was going for a walk, going for a hike was like a bit of peace and quiet, a bit of time away from the rat race.
Yep.
And it was that kind of, I think, that motivates a lot of people to start capturing it, because the photography, landscape photography, does two things. It lets you share the beauty that you are seeing and the experiences that you're having. And it also gives you a reason to keep doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's
absolutely, yeah.
It's like the opposite to golf. Do you know what I mean? Where they say like golf ruins a good walk.
That's right. Yeah.
I think landscape photography enhances a good walk. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's particularly handy if you're not massively fit, because you've got an excuse to keep stopping as you're climbing up a hill. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, and that was. So yeah, when I was in my early 20s, still as a police officer, I was it was an escape, and it was something I did with my mate, and we travelled up to Scotland and stuff like that, and it was just a week, whatever, away from the rat race.
Yep.
In the beauty of nature. And then when I started doing the vlogs, that actually, and it became a weekly thing, that was encouraging me to get out every week in order to make a video. Then it's become more of a professional thing for me, and it's almost returned to being an escape again, because
right. Yep.
I sit in my office at home, now in my studio, and this is work where I'm sat in, not talking to you, but like sitting in this office, working at my computer, trying to generate some revenue in whatever way is my work. And then like going out and doing landscape photography has almost become my escape again.
Right. Okay.
There is a little bit more pressure sometimes though, because I'm wanting to get a video out of it as well.
Sure.
And sometimes if I don't, I get frustrated.
Yep.
I actually did it the other day, where I went out to the coast. Didn't film anything because I got frustrated and the tide wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. I got all annoyed with myself. And then I was hiking back up the cliff to the car, and some like really nice light sort of burst through the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a photo of it, but I didn't do any video.
Yep.
I then didn't think too much of it, then got back and edited the photo, and I thought, actually, I really like this. So I took a photo without doing any video, and it kind of made me feel better about the whole thing. But then, consequently, I then felt annoyed that I hadn't filmed it. So it's this kind of constant...
You've lost the opportunity for the content. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's this kind of constant sort of back and forth. And it's about, for me now, it's about trying to find an equilibrium of creating content, but also enjoying the photography and trying to maintain photography first.
Yeah.
Not worrying as much about the video, which isn't always easy to do. But I think what most people get out of it is what I used to get out of it, in terms of it. Like,
yep.
You do your job, you want a little escape from it, you go and do some photography. It makes you feel better because you're being creative, you're getting a bit of exercise, you're outside connecting with nature. Landscape photographers, I think what most people don't do, like when they're outside, people will go on a hike and they'll be marching along for 4 hours. I think the thing that landscape photographers have is that we stop.
Yeah, we walk for 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah, and then we stop and we wait. and we observe, and there's a lot comes out of those moments. It's why I like making hot drinks in the field. Do you know what I mean? Because you kind of, and camping out like up on top of a mountain and things, and because it really it's almost like this primal thing of like living outside and cooking outside. And I mean, you Australians are obviously famous for their barbecues. Like there's something that feels intrinsically right about cooking outside.
Absolutely.
And it connects to, it genuinely connects to who we are. So I think being still and not moving whilst being outside away from your home, I think there's something quite special about that is almost like a basic instinct almost that I think a lot of people have lost. But landscape photographers find again. Do you know what I mean? Like it's...
No, I really like that idea. It's interesting. I guess one of the things in terms of the photography side of things and the creative side of things, when did it start to become about art as opposed to snapshots and, oh, that's a nice scene, I'll take that, I'll take that shot and it's just a nice scene, as opposed to, trying to, play with long exposure, doing different things with editing and processing and so forth, and the more creative side of it?
I think most people go through a very natural process where it starts with the art. They enjoy the outdoors, and like I said earlier, what attracts us is that we want to show this beauty off.
Mm-hmm.
That's art. Like you're trying to share your love of that landscape with someone, and I think that for most people that's where it begins. I want to take a photograph of this because it looks great. I want to show someone how great this looks. That is art. Like you're trying to portray that story, but then you think about getting a nice camera, and then you've got to figure out how to use it, and you get sucked into these technical aspects. And for quite a while, depending how frequently you shoot, you forget about the artistic stuff. But I think this is a natural process of learning. Like one of the things I learned when I was a cop is like you go into being a police officer with most people with a lot of common sense. Like roughly what's right and wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
But then you started learning about legislation and the law, and it's almost sucks common sense out of it.
Yep.
So that's like new police officers are often quite like at risk because they forget about common sense, which they had initially, but they're so focused on the technicalities of the law and how they apply it in a legal way that they forget about common sense.
Yeah.
And after a while,
forget about the discretion which they may have to interpret.
But with experience, that starts to creep back in. And I think that same pattern happens with photographers, is that you start off with that artistic desire, you then focus on the technical, because it's almost a necessity. You've got to learn how your camera works. There's no two ways about it. And after a while, you drift back, you become competent with your camera and the technical aspects, and you can drift back into that more artistic side. And I think it's quite a natural progression for everybody. What some people get stuck with is in that they get stuck in that technical area. And I think the reason that happens, and this is what not many people talk about, is good old hard work and practice.
Yeah.
Like there's no replacement for that. You can't become a master of your camera if you only use it once a year.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like you've got to be using it more than that. You've got to be practicing and working hard to get better at it. Like, so you'll never get into that artistic, interesting area unless you put the work in. It's like anything. It's like any skill.
Yeah.
Like,
what is it?
Are we saying
10,000 hours?
Yeah, exactly. Are we saying photography is not a skill? So do you know what I mean? Like people say, "Oh, you've got a nice camera, so just point it at something and you get a good picture." Is that what?
Well, that's all you do. You just push a button, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is that what we're saying, or are we are we saying that it's a really interesting art that you can get really good at? That like people can get objectively good at photography and create objectively good photographs.
Yeah.
I think you can, but it takes hard work and practice, like any skill does.
Absolutely. Yeah. Talking about your local area, I guess I'm interested. You're based in Yorkshire, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what sort of things are you seeing around your local area that I guess impress you enough to get out there? And I guess just for people that don't know the area, what are conditions like, and what are your favourite locations around where you live?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really fortunate where I live. I live in a city called Leeds. It's, if you look at a map of the UK, from the top of Scotland to the very bottom of England,
yep.
I'm pretty much bang in the middle of the United Kingdom. So, and in northern England, it's very hilly. So, I have about 4 national parks within about an hour and a half of my house.
Yep.
So if I go west, I've got the Lake District.
Yep.
If I go north, I'm into the Yorkshire Dales. If I go east, I get to the North Yorkshire Moors and the Yorkshire Coast.
Yep.
And if I go south, I'm into what they call the Peak District.
Yeah.
And so I'm very fortunate with that, with where I live. And it provides almost endless photo opportunities. And I'm very much a proponent of going to the same place over and over again, because such different things can happen.
Absolutely,
if you go there enough, and you become a storyteller of that place. And you're always, if you explore enough and you walk enough, you're going to find new things as well. That's not the case everywhere. Every time I talk to Andrew Marr, I'm just utterly blown away by the size of Australia and how far he's got to go to find a new location. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
I only have to travel a maximum of sort of 3 hours to get to all the best places in the UK, pretty much. Whereas he's doing a 8-hour drive to the beach. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's mind bending how big Australia is. So
yeah, well, it depends. I mean, if I there's some beaches where it would take me a long time. Living in Sydney, I've probably got about an hour to most. What is there? There's something like 70 beaches within an hour of where I am, and they're all different.
I mean, I've got mountains, I've got hills, I've got wild moors, I've got woodland, all the woodland I could ever want. I've got coastlines, I've got cliffs, I've got beaches. Snow in winter.
You've got a proper 4 seasons. That's one thing.
Autumn colour, spring greens. Like, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a landscape photographer's dream, really. Like, it's amazing. It's also why I don't feel a need to travel too much.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you travel very far for your photography?
Not at the moment, and I haven't done for the last few years. And like I said, that's because I don't want to be away from my children every night. I also I'm kind of torn with the authenticity side of things. So, like, I understand who my audience are.
Yep.
And the stories that I'm telling. And if the story is, right, if the story is, look how amazing I am, and look at this amazing place I'm at that you're not at. I understand how that comes across. And that's not like that. They are not the stories and the videos that I want to make, because that's not who I am. I want to make content that does something for someone, whether it's entertainment or a bit of education or sparks a slightly different way of thinking, and it's relatable because it's something you can do wherever you are in the world. Do you know what I mean? Like that, and it's that sort of more human side that I'm interested in. And it's not about the travel for me. Like, that's not what my channel is about. It's not about, look at this amazing place I'm in. Isn't this place in South America utterly beautiful? And if I did go, I'm not saying I won't go somewhere like that, but if I did, that wouldn't be the story. It would be something about the adventure and the difficulties. Do you know what I mean? Like, it'd be about almost like a quest type story, rather than it'd be the pursuit of something, rather than look how amazing I am and look at this amazing place I'm in. And I think some videos sometimes come across like that, and I'm not as interested in watching those.
Yeah, no.
I think to name an example of someone who does it really well, I think someone like Morten Hilmer. Have you come across him? He does it amazingly well. Like his trips to Greenland and stuff, where he's camping in the snow on an ice cap by himself with a gun and a electric fence to scare off the bears and that sort of thing. Like, I think that's incredible. Like, it's
absolutely,
because I would love to do something like that, but I think probably some people look at it thinking I could never do that, but I'm loving watching him do it, because he's telling that story in a really natural, exciting way that's offering a lot of value to the people watching it. And I think that's kind of what I want my channel to be about. But it's not about travel. Like, I don't want to make travel a big part of what my channel's about, because thinking about, I'm making no judgment, but I'm wrestling with the idea of being someone that promotes tourism as well. Like, I don't quite know how I feel about that yet.
Yeah. So
from an environmental point of view, like I say, I'm making no judgment, and I don't have all the answers, but it's just something I'm kind of thinking about, of where I actually stand on that.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about the environment, which we'll come to shortly. But before we do you have a favourite spot that just keeps drawing you back? And what, you don't have to give away any particular secret spots that you don't want to get ruined by over time.
I mean, I love the North Yorkshire moors and the Yorkshire coast, because it's where I grew up.
Yep.
And I think it's one of the most beautiful and underrated parts of the world. Like in the UK, like the Lake District gets all the attention.
Got that star iconic sort of
and Scotland and the Highlands of Scotland and stuff gets all the attention, but there's so much going on. And when I look at, like, I've got prints up on the wall in my studio here, and when I look around them, like, so many of them are from Yorkshire, and they all look so different as well. So it's kind of, it keeps me coming back, because there's so much variety, I think, more than anything. So yeah, probably North Yorkshire.
Yeah, cool. So I guess moving back to what we were just talking about, some of the environmental things and so forth. But aside from the travel aspects, there's been a lot of discussion around things like NFTs and how bad they can be for the environment, or so forth. One of the things that I saw in your Twitter feed, I think probably a few weeks ago now, but was a bit of a thread that talked about how you'd come to your decision about whether or not to play in that space. Could you talk to me a bit about that?
Absolutely. So I started, I can't remember how long we're probably going about 4 years ago, when my channel started getting a little bit bigger, or when I was hitting like 100,000 subscribers or something. I started to get very wary about sharing my locations. And up to that point, I had shared a lot of them, because I didn't want people to think I was hiding my locations, because I want to keep those images just for me. Yeah. And I think some people do hide their locations for that reason, but I didn't. I'm not trying to hold any knowledge in. Do you know what I mean? I'm not. However, I think we started seeing in the UK some examples of areas being damaged and destroyed.
Yeah. I think it's a global problem. I don't think it's just
And I was thinking, I just looked at the numbers of what. So say if I have 100,000 subscribers, 1% of those people are idiots, right?
Yep.
Even if 20% of those idiots, so 20% of 1% of my audience,
yep,
travel to the places that I've told them about and damage that location, that is not an impact that I want to have. So I decided to stop sharing my my locations. That's in combination with me wanting to, as a landscape photographer, someone who openly cares about the landscape and nature and the environment, to learn. I wanted to learn more about it, because some of the stuff that I was seeing felt like, if you don't mind me swearing, bullshit.
Oh, go for it. It's an adult podcast.
Okay, some of the stuff I was seeing felt like bullshit. So people talked a lot about carbon offsetting.
Yep.
And having been a cop, like, I can sniff when I sniff something that smells like bullshit. It's usually bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So carbon offsetting felt a little bit like that. Like, you can do as many flights as you want as long as you buy some carbon offsetting.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense.
I used to work in the airline industry, and that was always something that I sort of screwed my eyes up and said, I don't buy that.
So very recently, I heard this story of this. I can't remember the name. Let me just look it up, because I do have it. It's an organisation in the US called, what are they called? The Massachusetts Audubon area. They own a woodland, basically, and they help birds and stuff. And what they did was sell carbon offsetting credits to the oil industry. So the oil industry can say, well, we're being ESG compliant, we're being environmentally friendly because we're buying these carbon offsetting credits. Now, what this organisation did was they sold these credits to the oil companies for a lot of money, based on the fact that they'd promised not to cut their trees down. So they weren't ever going to cut the trees down, because they're there to protect some of the birds.
Yeah.
And they own this woodland. So they promised not to cut the trees down, and that was the carbon offsetting credit. Now, there are better carbon credits than that, but a lot of it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's a scam.
And the amount, I mean, even if you are planting trees, the amount that you need to plant to actually truly offset the carbon usage is almost unsustainable.
Exactly. And also, the planting of trees can have unintended consequences.
Correct.
on the ecosystem that they get planted in as well. So it's a lot more complicated than people make out. So anyway, I decided, like, I don't really know that much about the environmental issues, and I suspect some of it's not true as well, because it's so political. So I decided I'd start looking into it myself, and I started doing that. And there was various little bits I was looking at. This is linked to NFTs, so to bring it all around. I then started looking. I heard about NFTs at the end of 2020.
Yep.
Start of 2021. I thought that, and it was on the basis that this is empowering for artists, and it could be empowering for photographers by creating this marketplace that didn't exist before, that celebrates artists. I thought that sounds really interesting. The fact that with an NFT, non-fungible token, you're essentially minting this thing on a blockchain, and you then sell that NFT that links to an image to a person. But then if it sells again, if it's sold on, the original artist gets a portion of that sale, like a royalty. That was exciting. That excited me. I thought, oh wow, this could be good. Not just for me, but for
Yeah, and it sort of flips the traditional art world a little bit on the head, where the control comes back to the artist as opposed to the gallery.
Yeah, it could work for me. It could work for music artists. It could work for photographers, any digital artists, anything. So I got really excited about it. So I thought, well, I'm going to give it a go. I want to have some skin in the game to understand this. So I one day jumped on to the internet, did a little bit of research, and bought one Ethereum.
Yep.
And I think at that point it was about, I think I got my first one for about £800, something like that. And then I minted an NFT, created like a smart contract. So that was half of that £800 gone on that for the gas fees and stuff. And then I did a little bit more research, and the environmental thing came up. And people talked about how much energy it uses and the impact it could have. So I thought, it's interesting, but I'm not into this technology if that's what it's doing. Then I forgot about it. And then I think it was in April, so 4 months later, I just happened to look at my wallet, my Ethereum wallet, and it was up at like £3,500, something like that. And it got my attention again because I'd made some money for nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like this sort of magic internet money. That's interesting. So I started to look into it a bit more again, and it led me into this kind of what is now like a 15-month long bit of research, that over 1,000 hours of research into how the economy works. And by initially looking at NFTs and Ethereum, it led me on to learning about Bitcoin.
Yep.
And how this cryptocurrency called Bitcoin essentially was like, it came out of nowhere just by this guy who stayed anonymous and then disappeared.
Yeah.
And it became this thing which is probably, a lot of people think it's definite, the most sound money that's ever existed, because it's limited to 21 million coins. It can't be hacked. It's never been hacked in its entire history, and could do a lot of good for the world. But it is based on Bitcoin mining, which is similar to how Ethereum works. Ethereum is done with mining as well. And that got me then again looking at the environment and the link to it. And that's then got me looking at like the energy industry. And this is a lot about a Twitter thread I put out yesterday. It got me looking into the energy industry. And that was one of the most enlightening things I've ever learned about the environment. The connection between the environment, it's literally everything I've ever cared about, all wrapped up into one thing, is the environment, how the effect that it has on the economy, the effect that it has on social aspects and fairness and people having opportunities and poverty not being a thing, and the money system, and it all ties in, and energy all ties into the same thing. It like absolutely blew my mind. And leaving Bitcoin aside, all of these things come together. And I think we're seeing it now with the invasion of Ukraine, the effect that money has on the entire system. So we're obviously punishing Russia with these sanctions, but that's going to punish us as well, because of the way the economy is linked to energy, how it's linked to people's social,
and particularly in Europe, the reliance on Russian oil and gas for
exactly the whole system is linked, and that absolutely blew my mind. But then that led me to looking more into the energy industry and how we generate energy. So I've done loads and loads of research about how that worked. And I think if you're not a person that denies climate change is happening,
Yep.
I think the build-up of CO2 in the atmosphere has been measured and is beyond. I don't understand how you can deny that's happened, and the speed at which global warming has occurred fits in with it being man-made. We've had warmer times in the planet's history,
Yep.
but not at the rate that we've seen now. So I think it's difficult to deny that we've played a part in that. The science suggests that we have. But then what are we going to do about it? And I think what seems sensible is to stop burning stuff and electrify everything. So turning your gas guzzling car into an electric car, turning your gas heating of your home into electrical heating. And then electrifying everything and then building up a renewable, clean source of energy. And that then got me into looking about power generation. There's a problem with renewable energy because it's intermittent. So the wind doesn't blow all the time.
If there's no wind, you're not generating. If there's no sun, you're not generating.
The sun doesn't shine at night, so you need this like flexible load power to go along with it. And mostly that comes with gas, burning gas. And that's the problem we're seeing in Germany at the moment, is this mix of solar, wind and gas leaves a country vulnerable to external forces.
Yep.
Economically as much as politically and socially.
Yeah.
So this is where it all came together, and that Bitcoin can provide a solution because it can incentivize the building out of the amount of renewables that we actually need to all live on it. So, for example, if we're all living off renewable energy with a bit of nuclear as a baseload, we need to push it way above what we need to be able to power it. But you need to incentivize that with users of electricity that can be flexible. And Bitcoin is one of these. I think there's things like the creation of hydrogen is another one, and desalinating the sea or salt river water is another one as well. There's a big desalination plant in London that we're using salt water for drinking water for millions of people in London. It's happening already. Technology's there, but it's power hungry. So it's another source, another way that we could kind of incentivize building out this big renewable infrastructure. So if you include cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin, into a system that could actually make renewables more economically viable, and over time, because you can't do it suddenly, you can't just suddenly get rid of fossil fuels because it will damage too many people's lives. You're literally like freezing people out of their homes if we do that. So if we're taking this sort of gradual approach, which we need to do more quickly than we are, we end up with a system of loads of renewables with these flexible things like a Bitcoin. So if we are saying that cryptocurrency, I'm not in just Bitcoin. No, I think that's, if you're into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, I think you should just look at Bitcoin and not be as interested in the others. But I think when people attack NFTs, to bring it all back to this, with a slightly long-winded approach, attacking NFTs based on its use of power is a mistake. That is not, I don't think that's the tact we should be using to attack NFTs because it's not right. It's been done on studies that have looked at the use of power with Bitcoin particularly and Ethereum based on transactions. And that isn't how you should measure the power or the carbon output of a blockchain.
The data centers where these things are occurring.
You've got to look at the blockchain as a whole.
And
the amount of money that's in it. You can't just look at a single block with the transactions in it and apply all the carbon emissions to those transactions. And that's how these people have got to, one transaction uses as much power as you would use in that's not true. It's been done that's been worked out in a way that's not intellectually honest. Either by someone that's trying to be dishonest or someone that doesn't understand exactly how these technologies work. However, I do think there is a better way to show these blockchains up for what they are. So that's why I'm saying Bitcoin, not cryptocurrency.
Yep.
Bitcoin came out. It was almost like a religious birth. It came out of nothing, and the person that started it has disappeared. So there's no one that controls Bitcoin. It's genuinely decentralized, and it's the part of what the NFT marketing is around this idea of it being decentralized. And really only Bitcoin is decentralized. All the other blockchains are centralized to a certain amount.
One of the things that I've seen, particularly with just the image hosting, I think there's one which was created by a guy whose Twitter handle is Cactux, called TuxArt. And it is the only one that I've seen where the image hosting itself is actually decentralized. If you look at OpenSea, Foundation, Sloika, the rest of them, Super Rare, etc., Rareable, they're all centralized. They all have a specific data center where your images are housed. And I was actually looking at OpenSea earlier today, not that long ago, and I was getting a 504 error. Yeah. Now, that means
it's gone down a few times.
The host is not there.
Yeah. So, that's why I think part of Ethereum is utterly dishonest, because there's also the fact that it was made by a few people who, before it went on sale to the public, made a load of coins for themselves. Before they even started mining, they created a load of coins just for themselves, and they kept them. They then started mining, and they mined loads as well for themselves. And these people still maintain a huge portion of the Ethereum ether that's out there. And the Ethereum Foundation also make decisions pretty much to however they want to make it. So they've changed the monetary policy of Ethereum a few times now. They did it recently with an upgrade that made some coins get burned in a transaction. So the monetary policy is changing all the time, and that's where Bitcoin is different, because you can't do that. The monetary policy was set on day one, and it's pretty much never changed, and that's why it's so good. But a big part of NFTs is they were created as a marketing tool for the use of this blockchain, Ethereum. And I don't think most people that are using NFTs understand the technology behind it. So a big part of the marketing around Ethereum and NFTs is the fact they're decentralized. So this image is a one of one. It cannot be reproduced.
Yep.
And to some extent that's true. But also the blockchain is not decentralized. And if we move over to the upgrade of ETH2, it'll become even less decentralized once they do it on proof of stake rather than proof of work. So I think the fact it's not decentralized is one of the biggest issues. And then when you look at even the fact that the image is not stored on the blockchain, the image is not unique. I heard a really good example of how to describe this, is that people think an NFT is an image stored on a blockchain. That's what people think, but that's not true. So imagine a sweet, a single sweet in a wrapper, right? You pull the two ends of the wrapper and it unwinds, and you take the sweet out and you eat the sweet. But this is a magic sweet, right? So that will copy, and it will reproduce itself infinite number of times. Whenever anyone wants, they can reproduce your sweet. As long as they get to see your sweet, they can reproduce it. And it can be recreated unlimited times for no cost. But, and this is what an NFT is, you are the sole owner of that wrapper.
Yes.
So you own that tiny little bit of plastic that's wrapped this magic sweet that can be reproduced by anyone, anytime, by screenshotting that sweet. Do you know what I mean? But the blockchain says that you own the wrapper. And that's literally all it is. And then you've got these centralized systems like you mentioned, like Foundation, OpenSea, even the wallet MetaMask is centralized.
Absolutely.
We saw it the other day. They've cut Russian people off, and they've cut Iranian people off. from accessing their funds in MetaMask.
Yep.
Because it's centralized.
Yeah. Somebody has control over it. Yeah.
Exactly. So that so marketing these things as being decentralized, which is a huge part of the marketing, it's what creates a whole lot of the value of these things, is utterly, utterly dishonest.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we should be looking at if we're going to attack NFTs, not the environmental stuff, because I don't think that's going to prove to be true in the end. It's not true. It's been dishonestly reported, the environmental side of things. And if we look at Bitcoin possibly being part of the solution to the environmental and energy problem, then it's not right to attack it based on the environment. So this long process of going through this learning, I just found it amazing how everything tied together and gave me an understanding better of the environment and power, money, and how NFTs fitted into all of this.
Yeah.
I think NFT, you can't deny that NFTs have value because people are paying.
Absolutely, yeah.
People are paying huge amounts of money for them. So right now they have value, but I don't think it's going to last. It's a system based on thin air. Do you know what I mean? And that's not the case with Bitcoin. It is digital still.
Yeah,
but it can't be changed, and it's no more a fiction than normal money.
Yeah, no, I know exactly where you're coming from on that.
One of the things I find with NFTs more recently is when you look at the NFT community on Twitter, it's unbelievable how many of them are burnt out and tired and struggling and stressed and depressed because they're seeing this gold rush and they want a part of it. And they've built a project. We're going to build. You're not building anything. You're putting a gallery together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're talking, and there's all this language that you've kind of got to slot into. And the idea of Web3. I mean, what is Web3? It's just a nonsense. But in the metaverse and all that kind of stuff, it's just not real. If we're talking about the metaverse being virtual reality, then that's cool. But why does it need to be tokenized? Do you know what I mean? Why does it all need to be?
Well, I mean, it existed with Second Life, and there's been a few stabs at that.
But if you're trying to do NFTs and you're seeing everybody else have this success, it's going to cause you stress, isn't it? Yeah. Because you're constantly comparing yourself to someone.
And like most gold rushes, the guys that make most of the money are not the blokes digging the holes or panning in the stream. They're the guys that are selling the pans, the picks and the shovels, and selling the food and the drink and whatever that goes along with, being part of that community and doing it.
Another interesting thing is what happens if the Ethereum network just dies? They'd switch to ETH2. What happens if that doesn't work? It's all your money stored up in this thing, which is centralized, really. But I saw the other day that I think 30 or 40% of Ethereum nodes, and then it's a collection of computers that all make up this system, live on Amazon Web Services.
Yep.
So it's the foundation of this thing that you've got your entire personal wealth in is built on Amazon Web Services and a few other cloud services. That's not decentralized. Do you know what I mean? If enough of them went down, suddenly you might lose all your personal wealth is all tied up in it. That I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if that was the case for me.
Well, a really interesting case would be, let's say it happened in the next couple of months that somebody said, oh, well, the guys that actually invented Ethereum are all Russian. And I know that's not the case, but let's say that was what found out. Okay, so what's Amazon Web Services going to do? Are they going to leave them running, or are they going to switch them off because they're running a separate economy that may be benefiting the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
And I mean, you could say, oh, they'll never do that. But we've seen some crazy stuff happen in the last few months, haven't we? Yeah, do you know what I mean? Even in the last few months. Like you've got the Canadian government shutting off people's bank accounts and stuff. Like, we thought, they'll never do that, but they did. Russia will never invade Ukraine, but they did. So like, what's coming next? You know, it's like, so like, I think anything's on the table at the moment, and I think that's why these more genuinely decentralized thing like Bitcoin, where anyone can run a node. It doesn't need, because the block size is so small, anyone can run a node. The entire Bitcoin blockchain is about 500 gigabytes. So anyone can store it, whereas the Ethereum blockchain is, I think, into multiples of terabytes already. So to run a node, you need something like Amazon Web Services.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you'd be paying a fortune on hard drives. And that's why Bitcoin is decentralized and Ethereum is not. So having your wealth and selling, not just having your wealth in it, but selling it to other people. This is why I opted out of it eventually, because maybe NFTs work out and maybe Ethereum works out, but I don't have enough confidence in it, having done the research I've done, to be sure.
Sure.
So say if I sell you a print, right? I print out on my printer over there, a nice A2 print, and I ship it to you.
Yep.
I have 100% confidence in that work, right? Because I've inspected it myself. I can ship it to you, and as long as it arrives in that same condition, and I package it quite well, so hopefully it will, we've made this transaction, and I'm 100% certain you've got what you paid for, right? How you look after it after that is up to you. But it arrived with you in 100% condition. I can't do that with NFTs. So I sell you an NFT for some exorbitant price, say $3,000. I sell you an NFT for. I've got no idea that in a year's time, that NFT is going to be worth zero.
Yeah.
From all good consciousness, I can't sell that to you because I'm not certain that what I'm selling you is a good product.
Yeah.
And I'm not that kind of guy. Some people are. The snake oil salesman out there, isn't there?
But the people that are buying the art for art are going to say, yeah, but I've got the file and I've got access to it. So if I want to create a print or I want to look at it anytime, well, that also depends a little bit on how you deliver that.
Yeah, but if that's the case, why does it? If that is the case, why does it need to be decentralized? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's
why do we need this narrative? Why does it need to be on a blockchain? It's not decent. Like the image lives on OpenSea or Foundation anyway.
Yep.
Like if you transfer an NFT into your MetaMask wallet, it's calling the API from OpenSea to show you that image.
That's right.
So it's not even so. Like if we have these centralized services, there's nothing wrong with centralized services. It's obviously not right for everything, but we're going to always need some centralized services.
Yeah.
But why are we pretending that these things are decentralized when they're not? I don't get it. Like, so if you want to buy a JPEG, cool. But we've had to, that's great. I'm well into digital art. I think the idea of owning some digital art is great. I think it was the Twitter guy, Jack, what's he called? He's not at Twitter anymore. What's he called?
Yeah, it was Jack. It was just Jack.
Yeah, well, at Jack, wasn't it? But he one thing he said about NFTs is that we're asking the right question, but the answer's not there yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite accurate. So the question being, like, how do we empower artists? How do we fairly pay creators? How do we make sure they're getting residuals on the stuff they create? I think these are all the things that people love about NFTs, and then what I initially attracted me. But it's built on a foundation of shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to put it at the moment. So, and people are going to get hurt. People are going to lose their money, and so that's why eventually I've just.
I mean, that said, I mean there's certainly been some success stories for artists. You know, the Kath Simmons world and Drift. I think they were both at Sotheby's at an auction where I'm not entirely sure how that worked, but there was real money being handed over for their NFT.
I mean, it's changed. It's changed some photographers' lives, hasn't it, for the better?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they overnight they've made this life-changing money, and I think that's great. But I think personally, I don't want to be replacing a broken system with
another broken system.
Yeah, that initially looks amazing. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a wolf in sheep. It's a sheep in the way around.
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, that's what it kind of is. And some people will benefit. Do you know what I mean? It's like the sheep gives out. The sheep lulls you in. It gives out some like treats. Gives out some treats to start with before it shows itself to be a wolf.
Yeah.
To bait everybody. Like was it a bait and switch, isn't it? It's a long-term bait and switch. Like and the stories of success are what adds to the whole thing. So you see one photographer with life-changing money, they become your best marketer for this thing. Look at this. I can't believe this has happened to me. This has been amazing. How amazing are NFTs? Because they've changed my life.
Yeah.
That person. And do you know what? A lot of these people that are doing this, the people buying those NFTs for terrible amounts of money, are the people that started Ethereum.
Yep.
That's what's so mental about it. It's literally the people that started it pumping their own bags through this kind of marketing. It's not a system I want to be part of. Like it's
fair enough. And I'm sure this will generate a bit of conversation in my comments at some point. But
I hope it does. Look, if people
same here, and it's why one of the reasons why I asked you on is to have that conversation about this stuff, because to me it's not about sitting there and saying it's all wonderful. It's it's the best thing since sliced bread. And I've had a few people on who have been very positive about it, but I think from my perspective, it's about being open and honest about whether or not these things are actually for everyone, and they're not necessarily a good thing, and they're not necessarily for everyone.
No, I mean, I think one important thing to say is that I hope something like this does work, and I am absolutely all in favour of doing something that benefits artists and that's what I'm all about. Like, having these empowering people to be successful and earn money and live the life they want to live. But my main concern is I don't think it's built on the right foundation. And for the greater good, I don't think Ethereum particularly, or any of the others, is. I think if you could figure out some way to do smart contracts and NFTs on Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin network, I think we'd be in a much stronger position. Because it's genuinely decentralized and no one controls it. So that's where I kind of hope it goes. Although to be honest, I'm just personally, I'm not that interested. Particularly for photographers. I think it's great. Digital artists are a different thing, but like you can't replace printing a good bit of photography. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Well, I know printing's a big part of your work. Have you got any advice for people that either want to get into printing their own work, or want to take their art a little bit further in terms of printing?
I mean, yes, but I am just about to film a video, actually.
All right, well, I won't.
that covers a
lot. I won't ask you to spoil that then.
Watch my video on well, it'll be going out on Saturday, I think, if you want some of those tips. It might have a slightly clickbaity title, but it's essentially like some stuff to avoid and mistakes to avoid and that kind of thing. And not all beginner stuff, but some kind of ways to get into printing and ways to think about it, and just try and see it as a part of the photography process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, again, I'm not setting the rules. I'm not the gatekeeper, but like there are some people out there that think it's not a photograph until you print it.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that, but like.
Well, I was going to ask, do you shoot with a view to printing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean that alone has been a game changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally, I think that really changes the way that you think about what it is that you are shooting and what it is that you doing in terms of composition and the lighting and so forth as well.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because I think some things that I've been talking about are really simple to understand, like the joy of doing landscape photography and even printing a piece of work. Like you get it in your hand, especially if it's your own work.
Mm-hmm.
Get it in your hand, you think, oh wow, like I've made this. It's a thing that I've made. It's really satisfying. It's simple to understand, but like some of the stuff around NFTs, the environment, energy, all that kind of thing. It's taken me so long to kind of research and investigate it all, and I'm struggling, I think, to relay these ideas in a way that's kind of digestible.
I think you've done a pretty good job.
One of the things I feel challenged with at the moment, but it's part. I don't want to just talk about the technical aspects of photography, like what you've said.
Yeah,
I think photography is like this window into life. I mean, it's literally that, isn't it? Like we're capturing a moment in time of life. Because
absolutely.
We're not drawing a picture. We're capturing something that's actually in front of us. So I think it's this window into life that gives us the ability to explore so much of what's going on. And I think landscape photographers particularly are almost without fail people who love the environment and love the landscape and want to protect it and do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just find it's interesting. It leads down from a basis of photography. It leads down all these different avenues that are way more interesting than just talking about like the f-stop of your lens. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I like talking about at the moment. So
yeah.
If we've lost some people throughout this conversation, I apologise for that. But
it's not a problem. I'm sure we'll pick them up elsewhere.
Hopefully.
So, are there any photographers that you think I should be talking to, and make sure that I get on the podcast?
Yeah. Have you talked to Andrew Marr yet?
I haven't yet. He's.
I think he is
firmly on the list now.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is one of the most underrated photographers out there. I think he's one of the best photographers out there. But like the following he has does not reflect how good he is as a photographer and as a person as well. So yeah, I'll definitely talk to him. I've had a few really interesting conversations recently with Verity Milligan. I had her on my YouTube channel as well.
Yep.
She's a photographer here in the UK who I work with sometimes. Really thoughtful person, really interesting person, and just a superb photographer on top of that. I mean, I'd love to hear some of your conversations about that with people who are into NFTs, photographers that are in favour of NFTs. I've invited a few to come and talk to me about it, and they've declined.
Interesting.
Which I find problematic from trying to have a fair discourse about it.
Yeah.
Like, surely if you believe in it and you're making money from it and you're selling them to other people, you should be willing to come and have a discussion with someone that is more skeptical.
Absolutely.
But so I think like one of the things that my friend sent to me one time years ago, I think it comes down to people not wanting to talk to me about this sometimes, is that I think people have can see now with the way I've been talking about it, that I've done the work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've done the research. And my friend said to me, like, one time, like, to be successful, you just need to outwork the next guy.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not sure that. I'm not sure. I mean, I hope it's not true. I would like to talk to some people in the NFT community who are really into it. I'm just not sure how knowledgeable some of them are.
Yeah, I think you find there's a range of knowledge, and there's some that are right into some of the technical aspects of how to write the smart contracts and all those sorts of things. But in terms of that macroeconomic view and how it fits into everything else and whether or not it's truly decentralized, I think there are a lot of people that are, sort of drinking the Kool-Aid as opposed to actually putting a bit of clarity into their thinking and looking at this.
I mean, maybe people don't need to have that level of understanding. Do you know what I mean?
No, maybe not.
To do it. But like, for me, that was important to understand what it was I was actually selling. I think that's like, for me, that's fundamental. And as I gathered an understanding of what I was selling, I didn't like it. Now, I follow some really interesting people on Twitter who talk about NFTs and Web3.
Yep.
Web3 being this kind of idea of a decentralized utopian world, where people have their own sovereignty and control.
Yeah, and the large corporations don't control everything. Well, good luck with that.
And you've got more privacy and everything like that. And I think, like, I like that. Like, that does appeal to me.
Yeah.
I'm not a libertarian. I don't think, like, I believe in democracy, and I don't think I used to be a cop. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think when society breaks down, like, I've seen it, like, during the riot, there was some riots in London when I was working, and for a brief moment, society broke down, and people don't want that. Whether they think they do, they definitely don't. So I think some level of centralization is important, but these people talk about Web3, and it's all linked to, like, these tokens and NFTs, and I just don't. What I don't understand with if people start to get into that idea, they just need to look at Bitcoin, because that's the answer for all the things they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think if you're into NFTs because you think it's this free, like, future that's decentralized and a higher level of freedom, I think all you need to do is switch your thinking away from NFTs into Bitcoin. And that's what happened with me in the course of this investigation. Never, ever expected it to do that. I never, ever expected. All these things I've learned are almost counterintuitive. Like, there's the sort of conclusions I've come to around the environment and Bitcoin, and it's all counterintuitive. So I think if people are into NFTs because they like the idea of empowering people and this level of freedom that it provides, this idea of decentralization where you have more privacy and control over your own life, I think all you need to do is start looking at Bitcoin in more detail. And Bitcoin was the foundation for all of this. There's no Ethereum, and NFTs don't exist if Bitcoin hadn't come first. So I think if you really want to understand what you're doing when you're selling your NFTs, I think foundational knowledge of Bitcoin is where you should look, and then you may change your outlook. Certainly, what happened to me, and it is what ultimately has turned me off NFTs. But I think we've done that to death, haven't we? So.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we've been going for a little while now, so might think about wrapping up. I've got one last and very important question. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I would never order pineapple on a pizza, but my daughter likes ham and pineapple pizza.
Fair enough.
And if there's one piece left over, I'll eat it without taking the pineapple off. But I would never dream of ordering
a pizza with pineapple.
A pineapple pizza, yeah. So I hope I hope I've hedged enough there, depending on what your belief about that is.
I'm much the same. I wouldn't order one, but if it was there and there was no other pizza, I'd eat it. But it's fascinating hearing what people say to that question. And I guess one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't done the numbers as to which photographers do and don't like it and what the percentage is.
That'd be interesting to correlate, wouldn't it? Like,
one day there's a PhD in there somewhere for someone.
Does pineapple go with anything else other than ham though? Because I don't think I've seen pineapple.
Not bad with rum.
On a pizza.
Not on a pizza. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, Adam. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed the chat. And it's really interesting to hear some of your thoughts about some of the things we've talked about. Where can people find your work?
Probably at the moment the best place to get a feel for what I'm doing is obviously on YouTube. So it's First Man Photography on YouTube, probably the first place to go. Catch me on Twitter as well. I've become much more active on Twitter recently and sharing a lot of the ideas that we've discussed today, as well as some pretty pictures now and again. So I'm at Adam Karnacz on Twitter, or you can probably just search First Man Photography as well. It'll come up as well, I think. The little blue icon with a camera tripod. And then, head over to firstmanphotography.com, which is my website, and you can pick up my book there if you wanted to. That ships all around the world and sort of covers that's sort of me sharing some of the stories from when I was in the police, some fairly harrowing stories from the streets of London, plus some funny ones, plus some kind of heartwarming ones as well. And then it's about how that built up a philosophy for life that I then transitioned into what I do as a photographer as well. And it's a photo book, but there's I didn't want to.
That's the photo book.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be. A lot of landscape photography books are come with stories about how they captured the image, and I've done all that on YouTube. And there's QR codes at the back of the book that sort of link you to the YouTube videos where the particular image was captured. But I wanted the story to be something different that kind of gives you a feel for where these images come from. You know what I mean?
Yep, got it.
Philosophically rather than technically. So, that's over on my website, and then there's other stuff on there as well. I don't feel the need to kind of promote everything I'm doing, but that's me.
No, fair enough. All right, well, thanks again, mate. It's been great.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on. Cheers.
No worries. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'm going to be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com, also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.